The Puma Fast R-Nitro Elite 2. What on earth is this shoe? Let's seriously talk about it. So before we get into the video, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're already subscribed watching the content, thanks so much. I love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other updates and things like that. So without further ado, let's begin. Specs of the shoe somewhere up here. And you'll see that the specs have a lot of similarities to an old friend or friends of ours in the race day shoe category. Mostly the Vaporfly series shoes in terms of their stack heights and things like that. So we'll kick it off with those specs. We'll go over what the outsoles look like after my first run and just go into pros and cons as we see them, right? So first and foremost, the shoe does weigh about 265 grams, which puts it at 9 to 9.1 ounces on average. That's in about my size 8.5, size 9. So runs pretty normal in terms of a shoe weight in this kind of category. Now, we do have a 40 millimeter heel and we have a 32 millimeter forefoot, giving us this 8 millimeter offset, which has recently become more of a standard when it comes to your race day shoe, aside from the Metaspeed Sky and maybe some of the Alpha Fly first series shoes that kind of came out. So this stack height, I guess, has kind of found its place as a pretty well balanced height for, I guess, your race day in terms of the muscle categories that you recruit while you're in the middle of the race. So that's kind of some of our specs there right off the rip. Let's get into what the bottoms of the shoes kind of look like right off the rip. So I kept this yellow tag on because this came with the shoe, basically like this. But yeah, once you easily take it off here, it tells you, that this product contains carbon, but it can still break, so please don't try. So I'm guessing this is just not a shoe that you just demonstrate if you're at a shoe store or something of that sort. They just kind of sell it to you and say, you trust it or you don't. And maybe, I don't know, if you buy it from Puma online or something like that, there's probably a better return policy in that kind of category with this carbon plate. As you can guess, a carbon plate is on this shoe. So let's get into the weirdness of this shoe, right? So you'll probably see just right away from both the left and the right foot that I've kind of darkened the outsole a little bit. That's just more or less I was running on freshly tarred parking lot kind of areas in my immediate area. So what was once this completely orange panel is kind of just darkened out, whatever, it's fine. But the immediate things to note with some of my wear here, especially on the left foot, is that my usual point of interest isn't touched much at all. That or it got cleaned up really well from running, but from this vantage point, it looks like my strike zone that I'm usually accustomed to hasn't been getting struck at this time, right? Also, this forefoot area, it's kind of darkened a little bit, so this area at the end of the rocker is probably taking some impact because of where it extends. So we'll get into all these little things in a minute here. I just want to analyze, after a 10K run, what kind of damage has been done. In the heel, there's a little bit of wear just from attempting some midfoot strikes, some more aggressive forefoot. There's a little bit of interest there that we'll discuss. And in the carbon plate itself, which you can see, it kind of runs through the side of the shoe, I do have some dings from running on roads with a little bit of rock movement, and that's going basically on both shoes here. I've got some scraping in this area right there. So the plate in this particular area, as majestic and as Frankenstein as it looks, is prone to taking a beating from the elements. So just be aware of that if this point of the shoe breaks, in my opinion, a lot of weird things are going to start going downhill real quick with the shoe. So, okay, let's talk about the specs starting from the bottom to the top. So that's kind of what we had here. This is the Puma rubber signature piece that they've added to the shoe, both this orange piece and this pinkish piece that's here on the bottom. We are using Nitro Elite foam here across the forefoot area. We do have it also in the heel, and I believe we have a compound of it in here, just it takes a different design rather than what we're seeing with this wavy pattern. So there's this little piece right there, and then there's a really thin piece which I don't think is the Nitro Elite, which is running at the bottom of the carbon plate here, that's kind of sandwiched in between. I think that's just the standard, Nitro foam that Puma uses, or it's their more, I guess, durable foam that gives a little bit more response and not as much squish as like the Nitro or Elite. And those are like the really big pieces at play in terms of foam. And then of course we do have the power plate, carbon plate, which is running the entire duration of the shoe, plus sticking out at the tip here, which is wild. I don't know what the immediate purpose for that might have been, other than if you're sprinting aggressively or something like that and you start easing more into like this forefoot strike and you just need that extra kick from this carbon plate, you can pull a little bit more of a roll from it and you can probably just yank out a little bit more pace out of it. And I'm guessing that's what its purpose is there for. And it just, you create this like really over exaggerated rocker shape as a result in the shoe. So that's just something, I guess, worth seeing as time goes on, how it's going to impact your daily run. But at this time, it's really crazy looking, I'll say that much. As we get into the upper itself, we have Ultra Weave pretty much on the upper, which I think pays homage to the Nike Vaporfly Next Percent 1, which had a very similar style upper, which had some breathability, had some rigidity, wasn't really good at expunging water out of the shoe, but it still had a really snug and cool design. So I think that's where this Ultra Weave kind of gets its inspiration from. And then we do have like another textile that's a little bit more of a softer kind of cotton feel running through the central portion of the shoe, more or less to make it fit like a glove. And then again, the lockdown of the shoe, actually before we get into the lockdown, the other two pieces of, I guess the two combo pieces. So number one, it's our piece to pull the tongue onto the shoe. It's like these textile loops, which we've seen in the Deviate Nitro 3 in the central portion of the shoe to kind of hold the shoelaces together there. And then we also have that piece in the heel. They're both supposed to be used in tandem to help slide your foot on when the time comes. We'll get to my thoughts on that in a minute, but that's just the textile. We do have this heel cup guard as well. That also we saw in the Deviate Nitro 3, which is supposed to play a role in the lockdown of the shoe. We'll get to that, I think, right now. So, let's talk lock of the shoe. In terms of the lock, I made a little bit of a mistake just because I overanalyzed the shoe and didn't get into just simplifying it for myself. We do have eyelid loopholes, which I did not use on my first run, right? So I have them right there. And what happens with the shoe, let's see if we can just run it this way. Forever faster, it says, right? What happens is you can run the eyelid through the shoelace here, and it should just come out on this side, right? Somewhere over there, you can maybe see it if I pull it like that, I suppose. And what happens is, because of this initial front piece design having like holes running through the shoe to kind of give some airflow, I originally thought that you run it through one of those air holes and it comes out the other side. Turns out there's enough of a gap where you don't have to do that, and you'll just be able to run through the eyelid without interfering with this upper. So I kind of made a mistake, and I ran it through, and I kind of made some of the structure here kind of rip a little bit. So I just have to chop that off with scissors, and that'll be probably okay. But yeah, it does confuse you at first because of how close it runs to the initial cotton piece of the shoes, right? Or this like central shoelace textile piece. Number two, we have our pull tabs, right? So the pull tabs themselves, I am not really a fan of them, and here's why. One, I don't think this 4-foot one works all too well. It ends up just pulling the tongue in a little bit too much, and it doesn't exactly pull my foot onto it. And I'm really sort of afraid of ripping it off the shoe, so I'm just pulling, the top of this tongue to run my foot in, and I'm also running the back of this heel in order to do so. So it kind of has more or less a fit of, I've had a shoe that had a similar fit to this, and it's not coming to mind now. But it's a lot more open in this case, I think, and without ripping these textiles, I think it'll be fine. If there was like some more stretch to these, I could see them being used a little bit more, but yeah, I'm not a fan of using them for this particular shoe. I appreciate the incentive of trying a new design. It's just not for me in this particular case. And the heel guard, this is or the heel cup, it's a good design. I think it's fine. It'll work just fine once I can get the eyelid pieces of the shoelace sorted out, because that goes into my next problem, was that the initial first couple of miles of the shoe, I had some heel slip. And that's probably because I couldn't get the lockdown sorted the first time around. I'm imagining by the second run I can probably get that figured out, and we'll probably resolve that issue. But be aware, if you're not using the additional eyelids that are provided in the shoe, you will experience some heel slip. There isn't a whole lot of lock for this shoe because, again, there's a lot of weight reduction in the upper in order to provide more moving parts in the bottom of the shoe to allow for more speed, right? So we're trading the comfort for a little bit more aggression and violence in your actual run itself. So let's get into that part. I don't know if I'm missing anything else here. No, I think that was it. So the run part itself, how does the ride of this shoe feel? Well, it's interesting. I've got two takes on it. Number one, this shoe is probably fitting somewhere between, again, like the Vaporfly X%, the original Alpha Fly with its crazy Frankenstein design of a plate being exposed, and even a Nike Tempo Next%. And those are the first three like examples I think of because I ran with them so much. And if you fuse them all together, you would kind of come up with this concept, right? But with the ride itself, my initial thoughts were, okay, there was a lot of frictional burn like in the ball of my foot. So in this forefoot area of the shoe, whenever I was striking and just trying to kick off and get more steam while I was running, I would feel the ball of my foot kind of burn, and it would just feel like I need to stop for a minute and just let it cool off. I think you guys know what I'm talking about. It's just like the building of heat under the foot enough that you're also rubbing on the top with your foot, and just that combination of elements causes sort of like this heat frictional annoyance on the bottom of the ball of your foot, and you just got to slow it down just a little bit. That's kind of going on. We also have a lot of stiffness in the shoe, so that is expected based on the specs we have here, which is, you know, massive Nitro Elite, carbon plate sandwiched in between that, and then this razor thin piece of rubber, and then, or the razor thin piece of foam here, and then the rubber that follows underneath, right? So we can do that again. We got Nitro Elite, carbon plate, razor thin foam, and then the rubber itself. So the impact distance between the ground and the carbon plate is extremely minimal, so you're going to have this harder, much more aggressive strike to the ground, which you have to get used to, and you're not usually used to unless you've like taken something like a Vaporfly X% and you've burned it to its last pieces of rubber up to the point where you're running on the foam and almost an exposed plate, and you just have that more aggressive kind of strike to the ground, right? So the trade-offs there is that this is not the world's most comfortable ride, which is expected out of a race day shoe, because what do you want to do on race day? Win, or do you want to have a comfortable time, right? If you want to have a comfortable time, it's just my opinion that you would run in something like a Hoka then, right? So that low blow jab aside, what I'm trying to get at here is that if you're expecting comfort, this is not a very comfortable speed everyday racer / race day shoe in this particular case, but there's some really cool, highly optimistic elements of the shoe that I'm looking forward to once I get my fitness back. So what I mean by that is my second point, which is that the shoe, if you really push with this thing, I think Puma's got the formula kind of sorted out here as to what you can do if you start pushing it with this shoe, right? So the speed is there. I know it's 100% there if you strike with the right parts of the shoe, if you get your turnover correct, if you're kind of experimenting with getting more of that mid to forefoot strike, like it's there. The foam / carbon plate placement in the front here is unique enough and I think weird enough where it works if you have more of that aggressive strike in your day-to-day running and you want to expect it out of this shoe, right? So if you're looking for the speed, I think you can get it out of this shoe. Personally, I just couldn't get it yesterday when I was test driving it just because, you know, I was just exhausted. I'm a little bit beat up from some triathlon training things I'm going through. And I just couldn't get the tempo workout I was looking for. But I think, if I give myself enough rest and really push this thing on like a 10K to half marathon kind of distance and pace it out that way. Now, if you run with a more neutral style form with this shoe, so if you're not like super forefoot aggressive and you lean more midfoot, like really, really midfoot up to here, what's going to happen is you're going to make a little bit of noise with the shoe. And what I mean by that is it's kind of clunky and almost clanky as well, where two things are occurring, right? You're going to be smacking this area of the shoe, which has this kind of like flat, open sound to it, but you're also going to get this spongy sound from the heel as well. So I'll just kind of do that again for you. Just like, you know, you're going to hear a lot of this kind of like clanking sound, and you're going to get this like sponge, like, you know, it's just, there's no serious reinforcement of the carbon plate in the heel, and as a result, you're going to get a little bit of a louder ride, and when you strike with the midfoot, you're going to get a little bit of heel sink because of how little support there is in the heel, at least from my experience. Now, the carbon plate might be running into the heel. I just don't think it's running the entire duration to be supporting this rubber, or it's not running low enough to give it enough slack to give you that kind of support, if you're kind of catching my drift here. So, I think for the shoe overall, though, like, this is a really ambitious Frankenstein design of a shoe, which the only other time I've ever seen something like this was in, like, the first Alpha Fly and, like, the Tempo Next Percent, right? Just, like, the exposed carbon plate, weird design, weird placement of foam, like, very minimal upper. Like, this is, like, the Tempo Next Percent of the Puma lineup, but it's intended not to be, like, the everyday racer, but this is intended to be like a rocket of a race day shoe, at least from what I'm seeing in the lineup. And just an immediate thought is, yes, this thing is going to be extremely fast. How fast is it going to be? Is it going to be extremely comfortable? Can you use this on a distance beyond a 10K, half marathon, full marathon? I guess the answer is yes. I've seen it used during the Paris Olympics, so my assumption is that this will be safe for a marathon use. At least by elite athletes, by you and I, the customer. I'm not really sure quite yet if you'll be comfortable with it. But again, that's kind of where I'll rely on you, the viewer, to just kind of leave that in the comment section if you've taken this on something further than 5 to 10K and how your experience in the long run is with it, until I get to that point, which might be relatively soon. We'll do some little bonus checks here with the shoes, so not related to the shoe. I'm just giving my bonus perks to Puma for this. Like, this is the box the shoe came in, so this is probably one of the nicer shoe boxes I've seen in a hot minute from a shoe company. Last time I got something like this was the Vaporfly Next Percent. I'm just giving Nike shoutouts in this video when they don't really aren't really like the main focus of this video. But anyways, you know, box is super nice. Everything with the contents is just like packed really cool, so I give Puma a shout out for that. And yeah, I guess Puma also sent me gift cards with this purchase, which is strange. I'm not going to show the gift cards themselves, but like they gave me one for like DoorDash, and then they gave me one for Factor. So that's really strange. So speaking of Factor, today is this is our video sponsor for today. No, it's not. I'm actually not sponsored whatsoever by any outside entity, not by Puma, by Nike, no one. This video is sponsored by viewers like you and my wallet and desire to run. That's the only sponsors for this channel. So anyways, moving on. I don't think we have any final thoughts. I kind of gave them for the shoes. Overall, I think the package for $260 at this time personally feels a little steep for this particular shoe. I would think that $250 is like right about the range of where you would expect a daily or an everyday race day kind of shoe, or your actual literal race day shoe to be priced at. But again, a lot of weird things going on here with Puma, just giving like a much more of a carbon plate experience. Maybe they have more confidence in the product being a lot faster than the rest of the market. They're probably not as ambitious as like that one Adidas shoe, which is like $400 with a double carbon plate stack. So yeah, I'm sure they don't want that shoe like etched in that category of use this shoe once and then throw it away. Thank you for your $400. So I think we'll leave it at that. So any thoughts, questions, comments, let me know in the video comments below. But yeah, lots still more to test with this shoe. I'm like really optimistic about it. I just want to be in a better fitness place before I start really pushing this shoe to the next level. And I'm going to see where it kind of stands when it comes to, you know, 2 weeks from now when I've got the Chicago Triathlon. If I'm going to end up using this shoe, or if I'll stick to something that I know works, like the Adidas Adios Pro 3, or go back to like the WOW and try to dig up a Nike. Like, who knows where I'm going to go with this. So yeah, this is a Frankenstein of a shoe. Lots of interesting things to still find out about it, but as it stands right now, really cool shoe that needs a little bit of a break-in before we start really digging into the details of it. So I'm going to leave it here. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys in the next one.